We can start then. Namo Vishpadaya Krishnastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyabadi Pasyat Desatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhattavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Hare. So we'll start. Achyutananda walked into Prabhupada's room and fell prostrate at his feet. Oh, Prabhupada said, you are here. When Achyutananda looked up, he saw that Swamiji had a 5-day beard and was wearing only one piece of cloth, wrapped around his waist from behind, crossed over his chest, and tied behind his neck. Prabhupada smiled, apparently in good health. Kirtanananda Swami also greeted Achyutananda and showed him his new danda. For Achyutananda, the most wonderful thing about Swamiji in Vrindavan was the simplicity of his life. Although in New York, Swamiji had worn simple robes, he had always been regal, a guru, but here he lived very simply and humbly. Once, when he sat down on the veranda outside his room to wash his hands, his body instantly became covered with flies. Kirtanananda and Achyutananda were always being bothered by the flies. This was the rainy season, but Prabhupada scarcely noticed them and sat quietly washing his hands. Kirtanananda and Achyutananda agreed that Swamiji wasn't just another Vrindavan Babaji. There's no one else like him. Certainly, Gaurachandra Goswami, proprietor of the Radha Damodar temple, wasn't like Swamiji. He wore thick glasses and could barely see. And when Kirtananda and Achyutananda went before the deities in the temple, Gaurachandra Goswami asked them loudly, how do you like them? Which one do you like the best? I like them all, said Achyutananda. I like that big one on the end there, said the priest, pointing in an offhand manner at the deity of Krishna. It looks a bit like General Chowdhury. Swamiji boys exchanged looks. What kind of guys are these? And went back to Swamiji for an explanation. They're caste Goswamis, Prabhupada explained. The original Goswamis, such as Jiva Goswami, who established the Radha Damodar temple, had engaged householders to worship the deities. And these caste Goswamis were descendants of those first householder pujaris. Prabhupada explained that the caste Goswamis were the proprietors of the temples, and they maintained the temples and ran the deity worship as a business to support their family. Several years ago, each of the deities, now on the altar, had his own temple, land, income, and priest. But for economy, the Goswamis had sold the property, reduced the opulence of the worship, and amalgamated the deities. So when Achyutananda walked into Prabhupada's room, he paid obeisance to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, oh, you are here. And Achyutananda observed how Prabhupada had a small beard and he was only wearing one cloth, and he looked in good health. And Kirtanananda also greeted Achyutananda and showed him his new danda because he was sannyas initiation. And Achyutananda saw something different in Prabhupada and Vrindavan, which was the simplicity of his life. He was always had been a different type of guru that they had seen and really liked. But here he lived very simply and humbly. And this was the rainy season and there was always flies. But whenever Prabhupada would be covered with flies, he wasn't bothered at all. And he barely noticed them and he would just sit down and just continue with his work. And Kirtananda and Achyutananda both agreed that Prabhupada wasn't like all of these Vrindavan Babajis. There was one, the Pujari, he's a caste Goswami. His name is Gaurachandra Goswami, the proprietor of the Radha Damodar temple. And he would ask the two disciples, which one do you like the best? Which deity? But Achyutananda, they will always reply saying, we like them both, because it's Krishna and Radharani. And the priest would always reply saying that he would like the big one on the end. He was showing Krishna because he looked like some kind of general. And The disciples were exchanging looks, saying, "What kind of people are these?" And they went back to Prabhupada for an explanation. And Prabhupada explained, saying that these are caste Goswamis, and they're the descendants of the first householder pujaris. But nowadays, these caste Goswamis only run deity worship as a business so they can support their families. And they had sold the property, reduced the opulence of the worship, uh, and just to so they can have money for themselves. Second proof.
There were many other interesting characters. The old widow Sarajini with bald head and shika, and Kalyu's bare feet, who slept in a room by the gate of the temple and swept Swamiji's kitchen and washed his clothes. Panchudas Goswami, the temple proprietor's son, who always chewed pan and went around sleepy-eyed in a silk dhoti with a red embroidered border. The dark old Babaji who came at night, who was constantly laughing and who made sandalwood paste for Swamiji. The local herbal doctor, Vanamali Kaviraja, who presided, brightly smiling from behind a desk in a tiny chamber filled from ceiling to floor with little bottles, and a famous Pandita who visited Swamiji and wore a gold-linked Tulsi necklace and diamond rings. All of these persons were devotees, residents of holy Vrindavan, but no one was like Swamiji. Kirtananda Swami even became disappointed that no one else in Vrindavan was like Swamiji. In the land where everyone was an Indian and everyone was a devotee, Swamiji was still unique. No one else was so simple, so grave, so able to penetrate through falsity, so attractive to the heart, or so absolutely attached to Krishna. No one else could lead them. If Kirtananda Swami and Achyutananda were doubtful about some of the residents of Vrindavan, some of the residents of the Vrindavan were also doubtful of them. When a European hippie couple wandered into Vrindavan one day, Achyutananda accompanied them to some of the temples. But at the Ranganath temple, they were refused entry. Achyutananda told Prabhupada, who replied, "That is because you went with those fools." When Prabhupada walked in the streets, people regularly nodded to him with respect, saying, "Dandavat Maharaj." But they were cautious about accepting his American followers as Vaishnavas. So here it describes the other people who were in Vrindavan. Like all of them were devotees. Like one of them was an old widow, like who had shika and with bald head, and who used to take care of like basically swept Swamiji's kitchen and washed the clothes. Another person was the temple president's son, who basically who was sleepy and he used to chew pan. And then there was the local herbal doctor who was sitting in a tiny chamber selling, who was basically taking care of his business. And then a pandit who had diamond rings and a gold necklace. So all of them were devotees, and Kirtananda basically he became disappointed that no one else was like Swamiji. So here in Vrindavan, where everyone was devotee, Swamiji was still unique, and no one basically could basically he felt that Swamiji was the correct person to lead. And one time a European hippie couple came to Vrindavan, and Achyutananda accompanied them to some temples. And at the Ranganath temple, they were refused entry. When he told Prabhupada about that incident, Prabhupada said, "Because you went with those fools." And when Prabhupada used to go on the streets, he used to basically get respect from all the people. They used to give him their obeisances and dandavat. But they were also a little bit skeptical about accepting the American followers as Vaishnavas.
AJ.
Starting with Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada, accompanied by his two disciples, again visited Swami Ban. Riding to Swami Ban's institute by rickshaw, Prabhupada told Achyutananda that Swami Ban had started the institute as an academy of Vaishnava studies, but had affiliated with Agra University because the institute had not been bringing in any money. Now Swami Ban had money, but the institute had become an ordinary school devoid of spiritual value. As Srila Prabhupada and his disciples sat in Swami Ban's parlor, Ban Maharaj made it clear that although he would not donate land for Prabhupada's American house, Prabhupada's students could come and study at his institution. Achyutananda, he suggested, could be the first one. Swami Ban then took them to the main building to visit a class in session. Instead of seeing Panditas and Brahmacharis studying Sanskrit as they had expected, Prabhupada's disciples saw boys with thin mustaches and giggling girls. Prabhupada lectured and then asked Kirtananda to play the Hare Krishna record. After a few minutes, Ban Maharaj told Kirtananda to stop the record, but Kirtananda, seeing Swamiji enjoying the record, let it play. Achyutananda: we walked around the place and I thought, this is just a mundane school. I don't want to go here. If I could learn Sanskrit and live at the Radha Damodar temple, then I could have a nice time in India. They continued their tour of the facilities, and after seeing the dormitory, Prabhupada doubted whether his American disciples could endure the austerity and the academic studies. It seemed that one of the two boys was always sick. First, Kirtananda Swami had gotten dysentery, then something had been wrong with the Achyutananda's stomach, then they had both been exhausted from the heat. On the whole, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Rupanuga in New York, the American boys who come here become first oppressed, so I do not know how far our American house in Vrindavan will be successful. His boys were not particularly studious or austere. Besides, both Kirtananda Swami and Achyutananda had developed a definite dislike for the rector of the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, and Srila Prabhupada obviously had reservations about the place. You can go and study here, Prabhupada told him, but don't live there. Live at the Radha Damodar temple and go. You can get a bicycle and go there. So they went to the school. So Prabhupada took the Achyutananda and Kirtananda to the school, and they were saying originally it was supposed to be a place for brahmacharis and panditas to study, but because they weren't making any money, it joined up with Agra University and essentially just became a regular school. And let me see. Sorry. So they went and they looked around and it was not what. Well, I guess it sounds like it wasn't what they expected at all. Where they thought it would be people studying Vedic literature and Sanskrit. It was just a regular school with boys and girls, and I like that. Kirtananda starts playing the Hare Krishna record, and Ban Maharaj is like, no, cut it out, we're done. And he's like, nope, Swamiji's enjoying it, we're going to just keep letting this one go. And then Prabhupada starts to talk about how he just doesn't think the boys would be able to handle the school in general or a life in India, it seems, right? They're not used to the austerity, and they're not particularly studious. And on top of that, they keep getting sick between dysentery and stomach problems and heat stroke. He thinks they're just going to be depressed, and it just won't work out very well. And they also weren't a fan of the guy running the place, the rector of the school. But Prabhupada says, look, if you do want to go there, but don't live there. Don't live in the dorms. Stay at the temple, and you guys can just ride to school every day. So.
Prashanti Mataji.
With regular medication,
gradually.
Gradually, the idea of immediately acquiring an American house in Vrindavana began to dwindle. Prabhupada needed his own place for his disciples, and that would take time. With regular medication, massages, rest, and heat of Vrindavana, Prabhupada felt himself recovering. By mid-September, he declared himself 90% fit to return to United States. He predicted that he would be back there by the end of October. B.R. Sridhara Maharaja, Prabhupada's godbrother, whose ashrama was in Navadvipa, West Bengal, wrote to invite Prabhupada to spend the month of Kartika with him at the ashrama and join him for his Vyas Puja celebrations. Srila Prabhupada liked the idea of going to the holy land of Navadvipa, where Lord Chaitanya had spent his early years, and seeing his godbrother. He also wanted to visit Delhi again and inquire about printing his books. Swamiji, Achyutananda asked, when you go to Navadvipa, I Am I supposed to stay here in Vrindavana and study? Don't you want to see the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya? Prabhupada asked. Achyutananda did. And Prabhupada, Kirtanananda Swami, and Achyutananda left Vrindavana together and returned to the Chippiwada temple in Delhi. For Prabhupada's two disciples, life at Chippiwada temple was hard. Delhi was blazing hot and lacked the charm of Vrindavana. There was water for only 2 hours a day, early in the morning, and that only a slow trickle. They would fill 2 clay jugs for Prabhupada's room and several buckets for his bath and their own. And then there would be no more water for the rest of the day. A mongoose ran freely through the building. Do they eat snakes? Achyutananda asked. They eat snakes, said Prabhupada. They eat garbage and eat anything. Prabhupada, who regarded the heat, the lack of water, and even the mongoose as normal, was undisturbed. Several young Indian Muslim musicians in the adjacent room regularly played cinema music on their electric organ, bongo drums, and electric guitars. Rehearsing for a dance, Prabhupada tolerated it. So the idea of immediately acquiring the American house is not doesn't seem likely in Vrindavana, and the Prabhupada needed a place for his disciples and for himself, and it looks like it is going to take time. And he declared that he is 90% fit because of the good heat and massages in Vrindavana, and he predicted that he would be back by October to United States. And he got an invitation from his god brother, Sridhara Maharaja, to come to Navadvipa. And Prabhupada liked that idea to be there to join him for Vyas Puja celebrations. And he also wanted to inquire about his books in Delhi. And then Achyutananda was also interested to go there. So Achyutananda, Prabhupada, and Kirtanananda, they left Vrindavana. For Prabhupada's two disciples, they found Delhi is blazing hot, and life in Chippiwada temple was hard. And in Delhi, it also explains about how there is water scarcity and mongoose are running freely in the apartment. And also, it also talks about neighbors playing the Indian music, but Prabhupada tolerated it. It was cinema music, but Prabhupada tolerated it.
Shrikar? Sri Krishna Pandit praised Prabhupada's work in America and his English translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. As manager of the Chippiwada Radha Krishna temple and the secretary of an active Hinduism society, Sri Krishna Pandit was interested in spreading Hindu dharma, and therefore he wanted Prabhupada to speak at the nearby Gauri Shankar temple, one of Delhi's most popular Hindu temples. Prabhupada agreed to go and take with him Achyutananda. Kirtananda Swami had already left for the west on August 22nd. Gauri Shankar temple was on Chandni Chowk. After a short walk through some of the busiest, most congested streets of Old Delhi, Prabhupada and Achyutananda removed their shoes at the door and entered the temple. The main deity was Lord Shiva, but there were many others: Rama, Durga, Kali, Radha, Krishna, Hanuman. The crowds stood before the elaborate altars, viewing and petitioning the various deities. Achyutananda had learnt about demigod worship from Prabhupada at 26 Second Avenue. According to Bhagavad Gita, the demigods fulfill only material desires and are therefore worshipped by the less intelligent. A Vaishnava, Prabhupada had said, respects the demigod. In fact, he respects all living beings, even the ant. but he worships only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna or Vishnu. Achyutananda had already seen firsthand that impersonalists were misleading Indians to disavow the personal form of God and accept all methods of worship as equal. Most Indians had no clear understanding of Bhagavad Gita or Krishna. Achyutananda kept this in mind as Prabhupada led him in bowing down before a few of the demigods' altars. Then Prabhupada brought him before the deity of Radha Krishna. Just see, Prabhupada said, Krishna is just playing his flute. As for the demigods, someone is holding bows and arrows, someone is holding clubs, someone is holding weapons, but Radha and Krishna are just dancing. And Krishna is holding a flute. So he is the Supreme Lord. So here we see, so Sri Krishna Pandit, he appreciated Srila Prabhupada's work in America and his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Sri Krishna Pandit was the manager of the Chippiwada Radhakrishna temple, and also he served as the secretary of the Hinduism Society. And therefore, Sri Krishna Pandit, he was very much interested in spreading the Hindu Dharma. And then he wanted Srila Prabhupada to speak at the nearby Gauri Shankar temple. Like it is one of the Delhi's most popular Hindu temples. So Srila Prabhupada agreed to go there. And then he also decided to take with him Achyutananda. So Kirtananda Swami, he already left for the West by then. And then it's about the Gauri Shankar temple. It was on the Chandni Chowk. And then it was like one of the busiest and congested streets of old Delhi. So Prabhupada and Achyutananda, they reached the temple, they removed their shoes and entered the temple. So the main deity of the Gauri Shankar temple was Lord Shiva, but also there were many other demigods like Durga, Kali, and Hanuman, many other gods. So and then the temple was crowded, and then the crowd they stood before the altars, viewing and then praying to the deities. And then so Achyutananda, he already heard from Srila Prabhupada about demigod worship. So according to Bhagavad Gita, demigods only fulfill the material desires and therefore are worshipped by the less intelligent. And then Srila Prabhupada mentioned that a Vaishnava respects a demigod, or not just demigods. A Vaishnava respects all living beings, even the ant, but he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna or Vishnu. So Achyutananda had already seen how impersonalists were misleading Indians, and then like they were propagating that all to accept all methods of worship as equal. And then therefore most Indians did not have clear understanding of Bhagavad Gita or Krishna. So Achyutananda, he kept everything in mind, whatever Prabhupada taught him. So then as both Srila Prabhupada and Achyutananda took darshan of the deities, then Srila Prabhupada mentioned, just see Radha Krishna deity. Krishna is just playing flute. And then as for the other demigods, there's someone is holding bow, arrow, someone is holding club, someone is holding some other weapon. But Radha and Krishna, they are just dancing. And Krishna is holding flute. So that's why he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Is Sridhari there?
No, bro, she's not here.
Vijayanand Prabhu?
In one large room, a heavy-set man with a great white beard and wearing a flower garland sat on several pillows. Many people stood staring at him. He reminded Achyutananda of Santa Claus. Swamiji, who is that? Achyutananda asked. Some yogi. Prabhupada replied indifferently. The main lecture hall had a large painting of Lord Shiva on the wall and was crowded with people, women in colored saris and many of the men in bright turbans. Amid such a welter of rituals and worshippers, Achyutananda felt protected by Swamiji. They sat on the dais and Sri Krishna Pandit introduced his friend Bhakti Vedanta Swami to the crowd. Srila Prabhupada spoke in Hindi for about an hour. Walking back to Chippiwada, Achyutananda wondered why Swamiji had gone to speak at a place with such hodgepodge worship. But without his asking, it occurred to him that Swamiji was willing to speak about Krishna anywhere to anyone. Hadn't he come to New York City? And what could be a more hodgepodge place than New York's Lower East Side? Sitting on the veranda outside his room, Prabhupada could see the huge domes of the Jama Mosque in the early evening sky. One evening, as Prabhupada sat softly chanting japa, and as Achyutananda, who had not yet memorized the Gayatri mantra, sat nearby reading it to himself. A Hindu gentleman came and conversed with Prabhupada. Achyutananda soon finished the Gayatri mantra and sat listening to his spiritual master talk in Hindi to the unknown gentleman. Achyutananda would catch only a word here or there, some mention of Ayurvedic medicine, addresses, Indian names, cities. They talked for hours, and Achyutananda wondered who is this man who could speak so long with Swamiji. When the man left, Achyutananda asked, Swamiji, was he your god brother? Prabhupada said, no. Is he a Swami? Prabhupada said, no. Is he one of your relatives? No. Who was he? He is my friend. Prabhupada answered emphatically. So this explains the situation over there in that nearby temple where Prabhupada and Achyutananda went to give a lecture there. Like there was a heavy set man with white beard and a garland was sitting with several pillows, and he was looking like Santa Claus for Achyutananda, and he asked him, Swamiji, like who is this? And Swamiji replied that he's some yogi. And the main lecture hall had large paintings of Shiva with crowded people, both the men and women, and with the rituals and worshippers. And Achyutananda felt he was protected by Swamiji, and Sri Krishna Pandit introduced Swamiji to the crowd, and Swamiji spoke in Hindi for about an hour. And after finishing the lecture, walking back to Chippivada, Achyutananda was wondering like why Swamiji agreed to speak at a place where where such hodgepodge worship. But without asking, he also remembered that Prabhupada was willing to speak about Krishna anywhere and everywhere, and he even came for New York City, which could be the more hodgepodge place than the any place in the world. And one day in the evening, like Swamiji was seeing the huge domes of Jamma Mosque in the evening, and Prabhupada was sitting there chanting his japa, and Achyutananda, who did not chance memorize the Gayatri mantra, sat near to him, and he tried to converse with Prabhupada. And when Achyutananda finished Gayatri mantra, he started saying that like he saw that Swamiji started to speak to a gentleman, unknown gentleman in Hindi, and it was like a long conversation, and Achyutananda could not understand all the words, but here and there randomly he came to know that they're talking about Ayurvedic medicine, addresses, Indian names and cities, and they talked for hours, and Achyutananda was like very curious to know, and he asked who is that person, and he asked him whether he was like a Swami or a relative, and Swamiji said no to everything, and he said he's my friend.
Sometimes Prabhupada's visitors would bring donations of cloth or fruits or even complete cooked meals in metal tiffins. One visitor, a middle-aged woman who had heard Prabhupada speak at the Gauri Shankar temple, came to Prabhupada's office in Chippivada requesting initiation. Prabhupada spoke with her, agreed, and had Achyutananda prepare a small fire sacrifice. At her initiation, he gave her the name Mukunda Dasi. She came daily to clean Prabhupada's room. When she saw that his wooden peg sandals were broken, she bought him new ones. Chandrasekhar, who had known Prabhupada for several years and was supposed to have been his secretary, but he was a drunkard. Prabhupada suspected him of having stolen from his mailbox more than 2,000 rupees during the past 2 years. Prabhupada's Chippivada address was listed in his magazines and books, and people had been sending money for books and Bhakti subscriptions. Even in the past months, Prabhupada's disciples had written that they were enclosing money in their letters, but Prabhupada never found any. One day he caught sight of Chandrasekhar in the building and asked him, "Where's my mailbox key?" "I believe you have it," Chandrasekhar replied. "Or maybe Sri Krishna Pandit has it." Chandrasekhar was drunk. "Swamiji," Prabhupada said angrily, "maybe we should make a police case." Prabhupada shook his head no. "Well," Achyutananda said, "if he's not punished by the law, then in his next birth Krishna will punish him." "That's true," Prabhupada agreed. Chandrasekhar looked fearfully from Prabhupada to his American disciple. "There's only one thing to do. Shall I call the police?" "No," said Prabhupada. "I forgive him. Yet only a few days later, Prabhupada's record player disappeared and Prabhupada suspected the drunkard Chandrasekhara. Prabhupada brought Achyutananda with him to his bank, the Bank of Baroda, to exchange some American currency. As they were about to enter the door, the guard refused them entry, thinking they were sadhus to come to beg. Prabhupada was angry. He spoke loudly in Hindi to the guard. An old spoke loudly in Hindi to the guard, an old man with a shotgun, a big strap of bullets, and a shabby semi-official uniform. I have an account here, Prabhupada protested. Finally, the guard allowed them to enter. Prabhupada went straight to the manager and complained. Do you think, Prabhupada said, because I am a sadhu, I am to be regarded as a beggar? Prabhupada told the man of his organization in America and his account in the Bank of Baroda. The manager apologized and reprimanded the guard. So, sometimes visitors would come and bring donations, ranging from like cloth and fruit to even cooked meals. And one visitor was a middle-aged woman who had heard Prabhupada speak at the Gaurashankari temple, and she came to Prabhupada's office quest initiation. And Prabhupada agreed and he had Achyutananda prepare a small sacrifice. And after initiation, he gave her the name Mukunda Dasi. And she used to come daily to clean Prabhupada's room. And she one day saw that his wooden peg sandals were broken, and she bought him new ones. And there's another man, Chandrasekhara. He had known Prabhupada for several years, was supposed to be his secretary, but he was a drunkard, and Prabhupada suspected him of stealing more than 2,000 rupees from his mailbox for the past 2 years. And one day when Prabhupada saw Chandrasekhar, he asked him, "Where is the mailbox key?" And Chandrasekhar replied saying that you have it, I mean Prabhupada has it, or maybe Krishna Pandit has it. And Chandrasekhar was drunk at that time. So Achyutananda angrily said that we should make a saying that if he's not punished by the law now, then he is next birth Krishna will punish him. But Prabhupada said that's true, but he still forgave Chandrasekhara, but only a few days later, Prabhupada's record player disappeared. And then one day Prabhupada brought Achyutananda to his bank, the Bank of Baroda, and to exchange American currency. But when the guards saw that they were sadhus, he thought they were coming here to beg. So the guard said he was not allowed. And Prabhupada protested and angrily said that he has an account here. And so the guard allowed him to enter. And Prabhupada went straight to the manager and complained, saying that, do you think just because I'm a sadhu, you regard me as a beggar? Prabhupada told of his organization, the ISKCON in the US, and his account in this bank, and the manager apologized. Second proof.
One day, Prabhupada sent Achyutananda to a certain restaurant. If you want to see varieties of Indian food, Prabhupada said, tell the man you want 10 rupees of sweets and 10 rupees of salty preparations. That is called Mishti and Nimaka. And just see the varieties. Achyutananda was sick and couldn't imagine eating a lot of sweets, but he stopped by the restaurant and looked. When he returned to the temple at Chippiwada, he told Prabhupada that he had seen the food, and although he couldn't eat it. Yes, but just see the varieties, Prabhupada concluded. And he explained how Krishna consciousness was personal and full of varieties, not dry. Another American disciple joined Prabhupada, Ramanuja from Ashbury. He had been initiated just before Swamiji had left San Francisco, and he sported a full black beard. Prabhupada didn't like the beard. Cautiously and indirectly he mentioned it, but Ramanuja's beard stayed. Ramanuja carried a book about Tibetan Buddhism, and he didn't seem fixed in Krishna consciousness philosophy. But here he was, one of the loser, sentimental San Francisco devotees, ready for Indian adventures with Swamiji. Srila Prabhupada visited the wealthy Delhi industrialist Mr. Seth Dalmia to discuss plans for printing some of his books in India. Mr. Dalmia received him well, but only gave vague promises of help. Prabhupada also met with Hitsaran Sharma, Mr. Dalmia's secretary, who worked closely with Hanuman Prasad Poddar of the popular religious publishing company Gita Press. Srila Prabhupada was already acquainted with all three gentlemen, since they had all donated towards his first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada wanted Gita Press to publish his Gita Upanishad and Srimad Bhagavatam, Hitsaran Sharma showed him an illustrated Gita in Hindi poetry that he had recently published. But my Gita, my Bhagavatam, said Srila Prabhupada, appearing disgusted, is the description of God. It is a description of Krishna. Mr. Sharma said he couldn't see how Gita Press could print Prabhupada's voluminous writings. Nevertheless, Prabhupada still considered privately printing Gita Upanishad with Mr. Sharma as his agent. On October 11, Prabhupada wrote to Brahmanand, "We must have our books printed. We have wasted much time in the matter of editing and finding out a suitable publisher. When I was alone, there was 3 volumes published, but during the last 2 years, I could not publish a single volume more. It is a great defeat. I have one or two sincere, if I have one or two sincere souls like you, and if you can make more publications, then our mission will be a great success. I am prepared to sit down underneath a tree with one sincere soul, and in such activity, I shall be freed from all desires, all diseases." So here, when they were in Delhi at the Chippiwada temple, basic Prabhupada asked Achyutananda to go to a restaurant and see the different varieties of Indian food. And he basically asked him to buy 10 rupees of sweets and 10 rupees worth of salty preparations. So when Achyutananda went there, he saw it, but he did not feel like buying anything because he was sick and he couldn't eat. So when he came back, he mentioned Prabhupada the same, and Prabhupada said, just see the varieties. And he also explains that Krishna consciousness is also full of varieties and it is not dry. And then at the same time, another disciple from San Francisco, Ramanuja, he joined. He had maintained a beard, and he just took initiation before Swamiji left from San Francisco. And this Ramanuja was not completely fixed in Krishna consciousness philosophy. He had a book about Tibetan Buddhism, and basically he was not focused that much. But he has come here. Let's see what happens. Then Srila Prabhupada visited the Delhi industrialist Said Dalmia to discuss some plans about printing his books in India. And so he received him well, but he was only giving him empty promises. And he also met with him, with his secretary, and also Hanuman Prasad Poddar of the Gita Press. So Prabhupada knew all of them because when he had, they had all donated when he was publishing his first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam when he was in Delhi. And Prabhupada wanted Gita Press to publish his Gita Upanishad and Srimad Bhagavatam. And Hitsaran Sharma basically showed him an illustrated Gita that was recently published. And Prabhupada basically told them that in his publication, in his writings, there is a description of God and a description of Krishna. But still, the secretary, he could not see a way how Gita Press could publish, Prabhupada's volumes, like which are big writings. And then Prabhupada still was considering printing with Gita Press, at least the Gita Upanishad. Then Prabhupada also writes to Brahmanand that in the last 2 years, not a single volume was published, but when he was alone, he was able to publish 3 volumes. So he says that this is a great defeat, and if I have 1 or 2 sincere souls like Brahmanand Prabhu, then he would focus on publications, and then the mission will be success. He says that he's okay if he can to sit underneath the tree and just focus on translating and publishing if he gets an help from a sincere soul.
AJ, you can read.
Devotees from America were regularly writing Swamiji, anxious to see him again in good health. But he didn't want to leave India, he explained, until he personally saw the printing of his Gita Upanishad was underway. Printing Gita Upanishad and obtaining approval for permanent residency in the U.S. were the 2 short-term goals he wished to achieve before returning. but he thought often of his return to America. As you are all feeling my separation similarly, I am also anxious to return as soon as possible. I think I'm fit to go back to your country at present, and as scheduled previously, I'm sure by the end of October. I must be fit to return, but before this, there are many things to be done. I'm not yet assured the permanent visa. The best thing will be that from each center, an invitation should be sent that my presence is urgently required. Presently, I'm very much anxious to begin printing here if Macmillan Company does not take up the work. Please therefore let me know yes or no from Macmillan. If he is not serious, then immediately send the manuscripts, finished or not, to the following address. Pandit Hisraj Sharma, care of Dalmia Enterprises, Scindia House, New Delhi. After dispatching, let me know and I shall do the needful. Indian friends who visited Prabhupada's room listened eagerly as he told them about America, the millions of cars and the superhighways and thousands of young people rejecting their father's wealth. But Prabhupada's visitors weren't fully able to understand his visit to America. Not that they were too simple to understand, and not that they had never traveled in the West. Prabhupada's experience in America consisted of intimate spiritual relationships with his disciples. How can an outsider understand the dynamics of his temples and his disciples in the West? How could anyone except Prabhupada and his disciples understand these things? So, So Prabhupada's disciples were writing him letters and saying, hey, when you come back, we miss you, come back. And but Prabhupada said, hey, I can't, I need to make sure that Gita Upanishad gets printed, and also I need to get approval for my permanent residency for my visa in the US before I can come back, and on top of being in good health. So he's saying, he's hoping it'll, he thinks he'll be good to go by the end of October. But again, he needs to have those things done first, and he wants all the devotees to, all the temples to send him a letter saying we need you here as soon as possible. He also is waiting to hear back from the printing company, the publishing company, about getting his books printed. But he said if they say no, send them to me immediately. Send the books to me immediately so I can have them printed here. And then they talks about how Prabhupada's Indian friends would come and listen to his stories about America and kind of like the big city life and how the superhighways and the millions of cars and the hippies and all that. But the thing was, they couldn't understand the spiritual side of his visit and the connections that he made and how dynamic it was, the opening his temples and recruiting those disciples, and nobody but him and the devotees could possibly understand that.
Yes, it's not very easy to understand. In America, it's a different experience. Everybody is anxious to know, and they do not know. And that too, Americans accepting Krishna consciousness. That is an unbelievable task in the history of India. Very culture, special mercy. That's why all this might be unknowing. Who's next? Prasanthi, you can read, please.
Indian My mind is always with you. Practically, your country is my home now. India is a foreign country for me. The reason is that my spiritual family is there and my material relationships are in India. Therefore, factually, where my spiritual family exists, there is my home. Srila Prabhupada's vision of a wide variety society of devotees preaching in temples and publishing books, a vision he had even before he had gone to America, was now becoming manifest, but it was dependent on him. In his absence, his disciples were sustained only by carrying out his orders and receiving his letters. When Dayananda and Nandarani had gone from the San Francisco temple to start a temple in Los Angeles, it had been Swamiji's instructions that had sustained and guided them. Wherever there is a new branch of your society of our society for Krishna consciousness, I became very, very happy. And my blessings in heart and soul are with you. On receipt of Swamiji's letter, they knew they had done the right thing. No matter that husband and wife sometimes quarreled and that there wasn't enough money, the main thing was that Swamiji was pleased. From Boston, Satsvarupa wrote that he and other devotees there were moving from an apartment to a rented storefront near Boston University. The first time Satsvarupa entered the new storefront, he found on the floor an aerogram from Swamiji dated October 6 from Delhi. Uh, I can understand that you have secured a very nice place in Boston, and there is a very good possibility of pushing our movement amongst the student community there. Our movement is certainly very much appealing to the youngster section of our country, and we are successful in the matter of attracting the student community in our country. Certainly, this movement will scatter all over the world and fulfill the foretelling of Lord Chaitanya that in every village and every town of the world, the Lord will be famous for his glorious Sankirtana movement. Please try for this with your heart and soul, and your life will be a successful mission. Prabhupada explains his vision. His vision is for preaching in temples and also publishing books. It is all dependent on him. Even though he was not there with his disciples, he is sending letters and orders of what to do. Nandarani and Dayananda and Nandarani had gone to Los Angeles from San Francisco, and they started a new temple. And Prabhupada was very pleased and sent his blessings. He said, "My blessings and heart and soul are with you." And they were very happy, even though husband and wife quarreled sometimes because of the lack of money, but they were happy that Swamiji was pleased. And in Boston, Swatswarupa opened a small storefront to start a temple. It is near to the Boston University. And Prabhupada approved that, saying youngsters will be very much pleased by the Sankirtana movement. And he asked them to continue. And he also talks about the foretelling of Lord Chaitanya that in every village and broken corner of the country, the Sankirtana movement will spread and the Lord will be famous. And he asked everyone to continue his mission.
Very nice. So I hope yesterday and today, yesterday also reflected all of Vaishnavas, senior Vaishnava disciples mentioned that we are a movement. We are a movement, and those who take a deep dive into it, they relish unlimited transcendental pleasure. And especially Prabhupada says that I'm pleased. So it's a wonderful thing. I hope one day we all some members of our society will take this under not like, oh, it's just a temple. No, we are part of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and Prabhupada created this facility. It's a great honor to be, and it's unbelievable. And even I can't believe I'm part of it. It's a great pleasure to be there. Brother, you can please read. Brother,
Yes, Prabhu, yes, Prabhu, yeah. The letter was as good as Swamiji coming personally to open the storefront and begin the preaching. It gave Satswarup full direction and inspiration, and it was personal. In that same letter, Prabhupada had written, I am always aspiring after returning to your care and overload you with typewriting task. I hope we shall very soon meet again and help each other in the matter of discharging Krishna conscious engagements. I am now 90% all right, and I think I can return safely. This typewriting work is done by me. For 2 days, I am alone and doing everything myself as experiment. This proves that I am now well. Please offer my blessings to all the boys and girls there. In New Mexico, Subala was trying to arrange public speaking engagements for Prabhupada's return, and Prabhupada was encouraging him. If you think I can be on television by the first week in December, then you can arrange for it because I must be in your country by the middle of November. Srila Prabhupada wrote to Janardana in Montreal answering his philosophical doubts and encouraging him to be patient with his spiritually reluctant wife. And to Rai Rama, who was editing Back to Garden magazine in New York, he gave another kind of thoughtful assurance. I'm very happy that since it BTG is entrusted to you, the things are improving. This means that Krishna is giving you more and more facilities. Krishna is such a nice boss that he gives more facilities and improvement to the sincere servant. On October 9, the day Prabhupada started for Calcutta, he left behind a different kind of letter for Sri Krishna Pandit. Prabhupada had been negotiating with Sri Krishna Pandit to purchase the Chippiwada temple for ISKCON, or at least to rent the single room through a formal contract. Prabhupada wanted the room as Delhi headquarters for printing his books. On the day of his departure, however, Sri Krishna Pandit was unavailable and Prabhupada left him a short handwritten note. So this is Prabhupada is how he is actually concerned about all his disciples. So Satsov Maharaj's service of completely translating Prabhupada's, transcripting the Prabhupada lectures and BTG Seva was appreciated by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada is appreciating, he's mentioning about his health, that he is now 90% all right, and he's writing on typewriter. That means he's getting better. And Prabhupada is writing uh, Subala, he's trying to inspire him and arrange. He's talking to Rai Rama and who's into BTG, and he's he's saying about that Krishna is such a nice boss that he gives more facilities and improvement to the sincere servant. And then Prabhupada is, Satsur Maharaj says that Prabhupada is moving to Calcutta from Delhi, and his desire to have Chippiwada temple or at least a room to make Delhi headquarters for printing his books. But Sri Krishna Pandit is unavailable, and Prabhupada has shortly had written note, and the last paragraph is, if you are not selling anything within the room, then I may not come back to Delhi anymore. I will go to USA directly from Kolkata via the Pacific route for which Sri Dalmia Seth has already promised for the ticket. So Prabhupada is very focused in his plans.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's interesting. He wants to purchase now Chippiwada temple for ISKCON. Did he buy? Or maybe we can come to know probably next chapter, right? He did?
Yeah.
I think some Mr. Gupta will help later for the Delhi temple. Anyway, we'll
Right.
he
will come up with that.
Yeah. Any quick reflections from you? I'm sorry, I was in the temple service. Any quick reflections from you before we move to the next chapter? Can anyone want to enlighten me?
Like in Vrindavan, among all the devotees in Vrindavan, Kirtananda felt that
Yes.
Prabhupada was still unique because no one was as simple or as humble as Prabhupada, even though there were many devotees there.
And Kirtananda is observing that? Achyutananda came, right? Yeah. Did he get sannyas?
Yeah, Kirtananda got sannyas.
Okay, yeah, he got sannyas. Yesterday we read it. And then what happened?
And then
The Sanskrit class.
yeah.
Did they
And-
start the class?
No, no. So
Mhm.
to stop it.
Is it?
Yeah, but then Chitananda saw that Prabhupada
Was?
was enjoying it.
Oh, he can't even the Bon Maharaj said stop it. It's a weird. I heard something about it. Yeah. Anything else?
The hot weather was basically helping Prabhupada recover, whereas it was very difficult for the American devotees there.
Yeah. How did Achyutananda find the place? He didn't
Right.
explain. Okay. Right. Okay.
And then they're going back to the works of how Prabhupada was. There was Gautam Goswami was his name,
Hmm.
where he was the pastor, so he began.
Hmm.
But when Chitananda he had asked him, which one do you like? And then Chitananda
Hmm.
would say, I would like the one on the right, which is Krishna, because it reflects in general.
Ah.
Yeah, and the Prabhupada explained that these are past Swamis, descendants of the that Jiva Goswami had appointed.
They're not very
Yeah,
advanced.
and nowadays they're just doing it for the same.
In the family. Yeah. It's been thus has become all this trouble in India till now. Okay, very nice. Thank you. So anyone else wants to share more? We have read 15 minutes. We will read the chapter 28. Anyone wants to share something more from the previous? At least I heard that Prabhupada is still inspiring all the devotees in the US, and they're opening the centers just by Prabhupada's instruction, isn't it? Just go and do it. Simply, Prabhupada didn't, neither he gave money or anything. Just he says, go and do it. I mean, what an amazing, unbelievable faith they had. I'm really amazed to see. Just Prabhupada go and do it, and they are going in different places of the world. And now it's even they went outside of the world. Okay, India Revisited Part 2. Prabhupada's train, the Kalka Mail, pulled into Delhi station. Prabhupada and his two disciples had tickets with reserved seat numbers, but no car numbers. So while Prabhupada waited with the baggage, Achyutananda and Ramanuja ran from one end of the train to the other looking for their car. And that's right. It's still not new. That's what happens in India. After they had found their seats and boarded, Achyutananda untied Prabhupada's bedding and spread it open on the upper tier. Prabhupada climbed the little ladder, sat comfortably on his cotton stuffed quilt, and opened his Sanskrit Srimad Bhagavatam, while Achyutananda and Ramanuja took their seats. It would take around 24 hours to reach Calcutta. Oh, I didn't know they were going to Calcutta. Okay. Near the end of the journey, a group of educated Bengali gentlemen struck up a philosophical conversation with the Swami. We do not worship any form, said one, speaking fluent English in a loud, deep voice. We have a marble Omkara that we worship, and we sit and pray to that. That is also a form, said Prabhupada. He was reluctant to attack their philosophical position directly. We practice Karma Yoga. The gentleman went on, not heeding Prabhupada's previous point, because in Karma Yoga, you can stay within your position. But Karma Yoga is not full surrender to the soul. Surrender of the soul, said Prabhupada. One must come to the stage of bhakti. Oh no, the man protested. Emotionalism is very harmful, Karma Yoga. Harmful. Karma Yoga. So basically you all understand how the mindset. We don't worship any form, but we are worshiping already a form. we Bhakti Yoga, they think it's emotional. Emotionalism is very harmful. Srila Prabhupada exploded. Karma Yoga is for the fools. Silence. Another man, not with the Bengalis, but seated beside them, spoke up. Obviously, Swamiji is a learned scholar, he said. You shouldn't argue like that. The Bengali that Prabhupada had shouted at got up and moved to another seat. Later he came back. Are you insulted? Prabhupada asked him. No, he replied. But I have never heard anyone say that about teachings of the Gita. The Bengalis then talked with Achyutananda, lighting their cigarettes and smoking freely before them. So their original point, they are showing their original form now. Although they had not dared to do so before Prabhupada, it wasn't proper to smoke in front of a sadhu. Bengalis, Achyutananda told them, citing one of the Prabhupada's examples, were very sorry that East Pakistan had been cut off from the rest of the Bengal. But I think East Pakistan, that's referring to Bangladesh. But Krishna consciousness could elevate people to international, universal consciousness. Then there wouldn't be any such division. The Bengalis appreciate Achyutananda's remark, though they continue to blow smoke in his face as the train rattled over the last miles to Calcutta. So here the conversation looks like they're on their way. They're continuing his India Revisited Part 2. I think there may be few parts. So they're going to Calcutta, Achyutananda Prabhupada. I see Ramanuja. Did somebody got initiated as Ramanuja or something? Or he came from US? Oh, he came also? Okay. Oh, Ketananda left already? So Ramanuja and Achyutananda, they going to with Prabhupada, and interesting scene. As you didn't know the fun of traveling in India. I think till now we have those fun you can experience, especially in Bombay. That real fun of climbing nowhere else in the world will have. I remember when you have to catch a train for college, we don't know where our berth, and you run from this corner where the nowadays they have the numbers in the reserved cars, but you don't know where it's going to stay, in which part of the platform is going to stay. I think very recently they marked it. So basically it's a scene when the train comes, you have to find your seat. It's like a scene, even though you have where to find, you run, and train will stay only for some time. So that's the scene it is being shown. They don't know where it is. Finally they found their place. Prabhupada got his upper seat, comfortably seated, and the Bengalis sitting there started opening up their mouth. What is the opening of their mouth? We don't worship any form, but they're already worshiping. We worship only form, and we already worship. They were expecting Prabhupada will keep quiet, these disciples, but Prabhupada opened up and challenged them in one sense. Karma Yoga and all these things. Bhakti Yoga is emotional. What can you do? That's the situation, even though those days. Now it's still worse. And at least they left the place and gave some respect to sadhu. They were they were smoking in front of Achyutananda, and even though they are practicing karma yoga and all these things. And who is next is going to read? Vijayan Prabhu. Huh? Yeah, Sri Prabhu, you please read.
Prabhupada was greeted at Calcutta's Howrah station by relatives, mostly from his sister's family, and by devotees of the Goswami Mutt. About 50 people were on hand. They offered Prabhupada flower garlands and sandalwood paste, and then escorted him and his disciples into a car. Achyutananda and Ramanuja noticed that although Swamiji's sister was short and more round than Prabhupada, her facial features were strikingly similar. Her name was Bhavatarini, but Prabhupada told them to call her Pisima, aunt. As Prabhupada rode through the streets, he saw many images of goddess Kali, 10 armed riding a lion. Calcutta was observing the biggest religious celebrations in Bengal, Kali Puja, a month of festivities in honor of the goddess Kali. Throughout the city, brass bands and radio music blared, and there were decorative lights, stages, and tents. When Prabhupada arrived at Pisima's house in South Calcutta, his relatives seated him and performed an arati ceremony in his honor, reverentially offering him the traditional items incense, a flaming lamp, flowers. They also bathed his feet. He sat smilingly within the crowded room of relatives who were proud of his having journeyed to America on behalf of Lord Krishna. As Prabhupada's family members sang Hare Krishna Kirtan, from outside the room, the ladies of the house began singing a high, shrill, whooping sound. Achyutananda and Ramanuja were startled. Pisima had prepared a large feast, much of it cooked in mustard seed oil, for the homecoming celebration, and Prabhupada satisfied her by honoring the prasadam, even though he was not feeling well and was tired from the train ride. Soon after the festivities, Prabhupada and his disciples retired. Again his health wavered, this time because of his sister's heavy cooking, and he felt a strain on his heart. He sent for an Ayurvedic doctor who taught Achyutananda how to do a very gentle massage to help circulation and restricted Prabhupada from sweets. So here you see Srila Prabhupada along with his disciples Achyutananda and Ramanuja. They arrive at Calcutta's Howrah station, and then they were greeted by his relatives. And then mostly all the relatives were from his sister's family. And then there were some devotees from the Goswami Mutt. So there were about 50 people who were present at the temple to greet Prabhupada. So they offered Prabhupada flower garlands and a sandalwood paste, and then they escorted him and his disciples into a car. So, and Achyutananda and Ramanuja, Prabhupada's disciple, they noticed that Swamiji's sister was like, Swamiji's sister's facial features like were similar to Srila Prabhupada, and her name was Bhavatarini, but Prabhupada told them to call her Pisima, which means aunt. So, and then, so Prabhupada, as they were going to the sister's place, they rode through the streets, and then they saw many images of goddess Kali. So it was the time in Bengal where people worship goddess Kali, because it's a month long of festivities in honor of goddess Kali. And then when Prabhupada arrived at his sister's place in South Calcutta, all his relatives they seated him and performed an arati ceremony in his honor. So they offered him various traditional auspicious items like incense, lamp, and flower. They bathed his feet, and then Srila Prabhupada sat there smilingly. And then all his relatives were very proud of his journey to America and on behalf of Krishna. So all the family members they sang the Hare Krishna Kirtan, and then but outside the room there were a few ladies who were singing in a very high shrill voice, and then Achyutananda and Ramanuja that was like the scene. I mean, it was a little startling for them. So his sister she prepared a very large feast, and then much of all the cooking was done in the mustard seed oil, and then and then and then Srila Prabhupada, just to satisfy her, he honored the prasadam, even though he was not feeling well, and then he was a little tired from the train ride. And then as soon as everything ended, Srila Prabhupada again, Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, they took rest. And then again, his health was little wavering. And then this time it was because of the heavy cooking. And then he felt little strain on his heart. And then,
yeah, go ahead.
And then he sent for an Ayurvedic doctor, and then Ayurvedic doctor he came in, and then he trained Achyutananda how to do a gentle massage to help improve the circulation of blood, and then he restricted Srila Prabhupada from eating sweets.
Anyone knows what is the shrill whooping sound? Would be? No? Brothers would, no? Brothers, you don't know about this one?
Yeah, that sound is made in Mayapur temple also.
They do. Oh, like that.
Yeah,
Oh, you know that. Yeah,
but
that's
when males do, it's inauspicious. Females.
no. I was just sewing. I was not doing. Okay, so that's in both in Orissa also. I think in Orissa and Bengal only I have
Right,
seen.
right.
Thank you for reminding me. Males do in us. I have never known that. Neither males do also.
Just like startled.
Yeah, I was showing an example how it sounds like. It sounds like very good actually. It's very good when all the groups they do together. They
Yeah.
were wondering. They're startled. What was that? So anyway, it says 8:43. I want to thank you so much for everyone joining. We'll continue tomorrow. I'm sorry I joined very late. We'll continue from where we left. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Prabhupada Lilamrt ki jai, Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Hare
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol.
AJ, thank you for the yard service. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
no problem. No problem.
I'm sorry I didn't get the time to say thank you. So
Yeah, I was glad to do it.
nice.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't get tired.
Got sweaty.
Ready?
Yeah, no, we got two of them cleaned out, and two of the three that